Hello and welcome to Reroll. My name is Angus Morrison and I have a confession to make. Where usually I like to spend a full day playing a game before passing judgment, my time logged in 22 Can's Goddess beta, released on the 13th of September, sits around 5 hours, at which point I became so bored that I had to stop playing. It is the first game since Final Fantasy All the Bravest which made me just want to give up and do something else, and it's the first game I've ever played with a tutorial so embarrassing that I couldn't bear to complete it. And you might think that 5 hours cannot possibly be enough to craft a fair opinion of a fledgling title, but 5 hours is the length of some games, and if nothing has impressed me in that space of time, I think it's safe to say something is very wrong. Of course, Goddess is in beta, and this is therefore not a review, but a first look to see whether a game has promise. Goddess's loading screens proclaim that the game is about 40% finished, so there's still plenty of time to add and polish and tweak before release, but I can't see it being enough. Peter Molyneux has a long history of hype, of spewing wild boasts which fail to be realised in-game. Goddess he is dubbed the regenesis of the God game, the rebirth of a genre backed by £500,000 of Kickstarter funding. Ambitious, to say the least. You are cast as a god looking down at your followers and tasked with using your powers to expand their civilization, shaping the land to your will and encountering other players in the world and converting their followers to your own cult. Alongside there exist god v god arenas to pit your godding skills against one another. This isn't nearly so exciting as it sounds. First of all, it's immediately apparent that this is a mobile game, or more accurately, it's developed for cross-platform play on Windows, Mac, iOS and Android, but it has been designed with the capacities of those lower-end platforms in mind. For this reason, your range of actions extends to clicking, dragging and double-clicking. In fact, anyone who played, and I use the term played lightly, Peter Molyneux's Curiosity, in which you smashed millions of small cubes in order to reach the centre of a larger cube, will immediately feel its influence in Goddess's thankless clicking. Your first sight on appearing in Goddess's world are two settlers hoping to make a home but confounded by the large rock in their way. Being a benevolent god, you decide to remove it by clicking on it 3 times. Once the plot is clear, they no longer need your help in building their home, seemingly without materials, so like a cosmic janitor, you keep yourself busy by clicking on every rock and tree in sight while they go about their business. Eventually, each abode, as they're called, begins to generate belief, which is needed to fuel your world sculpting powers, and this manifests itself as a pink orb above the house requiring a further click to pick up. Every time. And this would be fine if you were dealing with a small handful of houses. It would be a menial task with no entertainment value in itself, but it wouldn't detract from the overall experience. But once you've amassed 50 or 60 different houses, clicking on each one in turn in order to collect the belief necessary to create still more houses to click on becomes the overall experience. And should you get carried away and flatten a great swathe of land for your followers, exhausting your belief in the process, you have no choice but to sit and wait for it to regenerate or smash up individual trees and rocks to scrape together more. This does not feel in any way godlike. In reality, it's closer to Mouse Holding Simulator 2013, and though you do unlock a statue which will collect all the belief within a certain radius, for me this came about 4 hours in, by which time I had dozens of abodes, spent tens of thousands of belief, and was thoroughly bored. The belief system is in need of complete overhaul. For my part, I'd like to see it automated, or at the very least the ability to form belief-gathering settlements awarded before the player has any more than 10 houses. In place of awesome power, you were given a dull and utterly unchallenging task, and I wish I could say it was padding, but it's not. It's the meat of the game. But let's move on to that power which should be most obviously godlike, the ability to shape the land itself. The world, as you will have noticed, is made up of distinct layers, and by pushing and pulling at the vertices of these layers, at the cost of belief of course, you can mould the land to your vision, as long as that vision isn't particularly ambitious. It's evidently a feature designed for a touch interface and the poking of stubby fingers rather than the precision sculpting of a mouse, and the experience is slow and frustrating, another thankless task on Goddess's list. Rather than the land flowing naturally out from your point of contact, only the selected vertex will shift as the others remain fixed in place. On reaching maximum extension, the vertex will snap back into place without warning. The result is slow trial and error landscaping, shifting each point out a few inches before doing the same with its neighbours. The lack of precision in the controls is made particularly apparent when trying to pierce through layers to reach those below, often forming a gaping hole before it recognises you're selecting a lower plane. This will rapidly burn through your belief and force you back once again to the clicking. And that brings me to Godos's most peculiar mechanic. To progress between each phase of a civilization requires you to collect and unlock, of all things, cards. These cards can be found in a number of ways, by growing your civilization, clicking, digging for treasure chests, clicking, and beating other players, which I'll come to in a bit. It's the treasure chests that remove any last sensation of omnipotence from your experience. Where a true god might will materials into being or provide his subjects with tools to gather them, this god collects randomized cards from buried stashes. Digging through layers of dirt towards a random chest in the hope that it'll contain one more candle card to complete your calendar card is not the work of gods, nor is it fun. Now, not many civilization stages have been implemented at present, so once again there's time for improvement or at least some variation to be injected, but the card mechanic is such a peculiar match to the subject matter, I just can't fathom how it came about. I should at this point talk about the PvP, where you stake a number of your settlers on the outcome of a structured match in specific arenas. The two modes that I played were a straight up deathmatch and a challenge to build a bigger civilization within the time limit. It's certainly the most promising of Godos's features, being much faster paced than the basic civilization creation and greatly speeding along belief and card collection. However, I haven't had the chance to play against an actual human, being first presented with a long and excruciatingly embarrassing tutorial. When you first open the PvP interface, you're greeted by a faux instant message written in the style of a young teenage girl, complete with LOLs and references to her dad. She's later joined by a fake adult who shares fake IM banter as you sit and stare in disbelief. I have never cringed so hard at a game without a sex scene. I cannot begin to understand why this was implemented in place of a standard tutorial. At best, 22 Cans have wildly misjudged their audience. The Godos beta is not going to be populated by motley 12-year-olds who either can't see through the illusion or think it's a jolly good laugh. It is filled with Kickstarter backers, people who pledged money in the hope of a modern reimagining of Peter Molyneux's Populous, which released in 1989. In other words, it will be filled with people in their late 20s, 30s and 40s, people who I suspect will be perplexed by the game pretending to IM them as an adolescent girl. What? So there it is. Though it may be only 40% complete, 22 Cans Godos is in dire need of overhaul if it's to receive a positive review come launch. From a gameplay perspective, I want something to do, something godlike that doesn't involve a cycle of manually harvesting and exhausting a supply of pink baubles, something that doesn't involve me as a deity becoming preoccupied with card collection. Though it may be designed for cross-platform play, I'd like to see Godos recognise the power and precision of which computers are capable in your ability to sculpt the land in anything other than laborious fashion. At present, it feels more like a £15 iPhone game on your desktop. There's still a long way to go, but for the moment, Godos is far from divine. I continue to be Angus Morrison, thank you very much for watching, and if you liked what you heard, please feel free to share this video far and wide across the many corners of the internet. I am ever so close to 1,000 subscribers, and with your help I can make that happen. See you next time.